Sean, there's a simple formula for consistent golf swing, and it's something that can be made really complicated, or it can just be kept simple and get the same results or even better results in most cases.
Yeah, so the formula is plane
Yes,
plus pivot
equals a consistent golf swing.
equals a consistent golf swing. Now we'll throw one more thing in there for ball flights, club face. So there's really three things if you want to play good golf and have a good golf swing. If you got the club on plane, right?
And we're going to show you exactly what that means.
And you've got a decent pivot.
We're going to show you exactly what that means.
And if you got a grip on there that keeps the club face fairly square throughout the swing, the ball is going straight.
That's exactly right.
You can think about it like that. Plane, pivot, with a square club face, the ball goes straight.
Consistently.
Yeah, consistently.
That's what today's video is all about. Most likely, if you're watching golf videos on YouTube, you're probably a little familiar with the game. If not, doesn't matter, we're going to explain it to you today. So plane is something most people have heard and is perhaps one of the most misunderstood or miscategorized or certainly identified with video lines.
Yeah, it can be done a lot of different ways, or has been done.
Yes.
And depending on the camera placement, it can be totally different.
100%. But we're going to first tell you exactly what the plane is. And for us, it's when you're set up, let's do a setup down the line, Sean.
Sure.
So when he's set up down the line, we're going to draw a line from his heel of his club up through the base of his elbow.
Yeah, just underneath the tip of my elbow here.
Yep. We call that the elbow plane. That's the plane we're referring to. Now, why is that important?
Well, that gives us a reference point for the movement of the club.
That's exactly right.
If we can stay on that plane or parallel to it during the swing, you may see some shallowing coming out of the top. That gives us a great way to not only see what we're doing now, but also move it in the right direction towards that plane, because we know when you have a reference point to work from, it makes it a lot easier not only to improve, but to get back on track when you start slipping off track again.
That's exactly right.
And that plane, if you can swing down that plane into impact and beyond on the other side with a square club face, right, the ball goes straight.
It's going to go pretty darn straight.
It is, and we know it because you can see it with swings. Draw the line and look for yourself. The highest level swings in the world go up and down that swing plane.
That's exactly right. And we're going to use that. You hit the nail on the head. It's a reference line.
Yeah.
Right? It's not magical, right? You can't see it. I can't touch that plane that you just had, but it's a reference for your swing when you have the camera set up. And these cameras are set up to film the video, so they're set up actually high, which is where we see most swings filmed from. And that's an issue.
Yeah, it is. It makes it look a little different than it should.
Yeah, it makes every swing look shallow. So if you want to shallow out your swing, put the camera right up here and film it there. Instantly shallow.
It looks way better up there.
That's exactly right.
No doubt.
But we'll show you in the drill section how to set up the camera. So plane line is a reference. We want to get on the plane as quickly as we can going back.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be parallel to it at the top. It's going to shift up above it, most likely.
And if your club keeps going, the club will hide behind your hands.
Yep.
And as you come down, you want to get back on the plane early.
Yep.
Right? With the club head.
Yep. It's actually, for most golfers, it's actually going to be a little shallower than the plane.
Yeah, it'll come down a little bit shallower. Down into the halfway point here. And as it gets to about waist high, it's going to stay on that elbow plane. Right about through to the other side here where it matches up parallel to the ground.
That's exactly right. And you can use that reference line to really start to meaningfully diagnose your swing and what you need to work on.
Yeah, because you can see right away, a lot of you are going to see it above the line.
Yes.
A lot of you are going to see it below the line and exiting way too high. It's just a reference point.
Even in the backswing, it's probably where we see the most plane violations.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Whistle.
Throw the flag, blow the whistle, whatever. Now let's talk about pivot.
Yeah, so as far as the pivot goes, I think the number one issue we see with pivots is the idea that on the backswing there needs to be some kind of big weight shift.
Yes.
I mean, I teach a lot of golf lessons. That has got to be the number one kind of swing idea that people have. And so, yeah, I'm trying to make a weight shift, and they go over here like this, right?
Well, exactly right. There's the idea that, okay, I'm set up basically 50-50. At the top, I got to be 80-20, 70-30, whatever, and then make a downswing from way over here, and then I'm just going to magically get there at impact. You got it less than a quarter of a second. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah, exactly right. You know, and we're going to show on gears kind of what the best players in the world do. But for all intents and purposes, your pivot, if you just kind of stay in the center on the backswing this way and then rotate through up onto your right toe with your hip over your lead foot here, that's the basics of a pivot, right? So if you got club on plane, you can make that pivot and you can figure out how to match up your arms to that that gives you the basis for consistent golf.
That's exactly right. And we're going to show you in gears in just a second how that virtual spine comes into play, because we see a lot of this going on. And if you can kind of control this virtual spine, your pivot's going to be 5x, 10x of what it is now.
So let's go ahead and look at gears and see that virtual spine in action, and the plane and the whole pivot.
That's right. And we'll give you a little drill at the end to make sure the club face is right. So before we jump in and talk about swing plane, we need to talk about how the swing looks when you're looking at it on video. And you're looking at a very common angle. If you watch TV, if you watch swings on YouTube or online Instagram, you've no doubt seen the swing angle. And we'll overlay it with a very common, very popular video or image of Roy McIlroy, so you can just see how common these angles are. And when you talk about swing plane, you have to take into consideration where the video that you're looking at was shot from. And most often, if you're looking at it online or on TV, you have no idea knowing where this camera was placed. So you're going to get a much different perspective of what you're seeing on film, or I don't know, really anything's don't film anymore, what you're seeing on the screen in front of you compared to what's actually happening. So when we look at this golfer, and this is one of our pros here in Gears, you're seeing, again, this common perspective when you look at golf swings. Now, if we compare that, if you're like us, we like to use a plane line when we're analyzing swings. We're big fans of the elbow plane. So when you're seeing an elbow plane on this golfer from this angle, his swing's going to look a certain way. And you can see that right here. Now with gears, the reason why we're using gears in this example is we're able to put a couple other things that you're not going to get from just watching video. So when we put his three-dimensional swing plane on this swing angle now, you're going to see why this elbow plane really doesn't make sense, because this camera angle is nowhere near looking at this golfer and seeing the actual movements that he's making. You're getting a much different portrayal and perspective of what those movements look like compared to the way they actually are. It's because you're looking across the swing plane rather than down the swing plane. And then if we compare, and again, these are all the same golfers, they are the exact same golf swing. Now you're seeing a perfect perspective-free representation of what he's doing. This is his actual three-dimensional movements. That you're only going to get this through a 3D program, but we'll show you in just a second how you can get this with your iPhone. Now you're seeing how these swings, while they look different, they're the same golf swing, and it has to do with how the camera was positioned and how it makes it look when you're viewing your swing. We prefer to have the camera positioned to where we get as close to look as possible from this perfect view as we can, not a view that's going to give us this representation here, this heavily perspective and heavily distorted view that you're seeing here on the left. And then when you move the camera in such a way and get it positioned correctly, you can see now how you're going to be able to really very closely represent this perfect camera angle with the perspective angle that we all have on our phones. So now these two swings really start to look a lot alike, and you're actually seeing a true representation of what this golfer is doing with regards to his swing plane, which again, we use the elbow plane. You're seeing now how closely his club head and his hands move relative to this plane line throughout the golf swing compared to the other swings. They really never came close. So when we hear people talk about, you know, swing plane doesn't matter, or nobody really swings on the plane, you have to consider the perspective you're looking at, because that makes all the difference. And then if you start to get the camera in the right place or start to see swings from the right angle, you're really starting to see how closely these guys do follow a reference of a plane line, and there's not a lot of deviation with most really good players. It's a really simple way to swing the golf club, and the more you can swing along this plane and certainly use it as a reference, the simpler and more repeatable your swing's going to be. So now with regards to the pivot and how we move our spine and how we shift our weight in the golf swing, we're going to look at the golfer in a little bit different angle here. We're going to zoom in from this top-down view and really look at kind of these virtual bones. That's what Gears calls them, this wireframe. And just to let you know what you're looking at on the screen, because there's a few things on here that will help to understand, you follow along the rest of this video, is you're looking at his left hip, his right hip, and then the center of his hips. This is the bottom of his spine. And that pink line that you see is his trace, is the center of his hips trace this line. That's very important, not only for this video, but for future videos that you're going to see from us. That's very important, how that line, the curve of that line, when everything happens relative to that line. You're also seeing up here at the top, his pelvis rotation numbers, and then we included this face-on view, so you're going to see relative to the club movements when all of these body movements are happening, and we're looking at basically his pelvis here and his weight shift. So as we get the golfer started, you can see what most golfers do is they start with the hips slightly open, and then what we see time and time again when we capture these players who not only great golfers but can generate a lot of club head speed, we see a shift, a lateral shift, a weight shift off the ball very early. And you can see right here, he ends his weight shift really when the club is just reaching his rear foot. So just outside of his rear foot, he's 1.5 inches. So basically the width of a golf ball, he shifted this early in the golf swing. And his hips are roughly square. So it's mainly almost all lateral shift, but it happens very early. Now the cool part is he's going to use the rest of his time in his backswing to start shifting towards the target. We call that the recentering move. You've heard us talk about it in a number of videos. Shift back towards the target as he continues to rotate closed in the backswing. And that's one key hurdle that we see time and time again with a lot of amateur golfers, is the idea that once that shift forward starts, rotation forward starts. So once they shift forward, that starts the downswing. And as you can see with these great players, and this is a great example, they're completing their rotation. They're still rotating backwards as they're shifting towards the target. That's a critical point to wrap your head around. And some of you may be thinking, well, why don't I just eliminate this shift altogether, stay in the middle, and then move forward? If you do that, you're going to be eliminating a very key source of dynamic movement and club head speed from your golf swing. So you want to shift your weight to the right early. You're seeing about how much it's done here. And then the rest of the backswing is kind of that recentering. It creates a flow, creates a dynamic movement to your swing that we see in every other sport, and it needs to be in the golf swing. And as you can see here, he's continually drifting back towards the middle, back to where he started from, as he's rotating closed. And then we're talking about the pivot as well. We're talking about that virtual spine. You can see here with our face-on view of the golfer and how everything now is tilted downward. His knees, his hips, his spine is even tilted towards the target a few degrees. His shoulders down. He has really positioned himself to play downhill, to swing downhill, to move downhill. That eliminates the need for a big push forward. And that's where we see golfers getting a lot of trouble. They don't position themselves early enough in the golf swing, and then they don't position themselves with enough tilts that they don't have to rely on a big shove forward. Because when you shove forward to start your downswing, your hip's going to take out from underneath you, and your upper body's going to tilt backwards, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So he's positioned himself very early in his backswing to really leverage himself with the ground, to take advantage of all that the ground has to offer for generating club head speed. And it's a lot. It's our only connection. And he's able to do that by positioning himself early. And you can see he continues forward. He's keeping those tilts down still as he continues forward. Then right here, when he gets to this left arm parallel spot, he's nearly 4 inches forward of where he started, at another 1.6 inches from how far he went back. And you can see how much shift has happened. And he still has his hips and knees tilted downhill. We see so many amateur golfers popping those things up and they're already playing uphill. You want to continue that downhill surf. Creates a tremendous advantage for you in the downswing to generate club head speed and consistency. And as we move him here through impact, you can see just how all that moves. And notice that he's shifting around the center of his pelvis. He's not really shifting around the right hip and then the left hip. He's very much rotating around the center of his pelvis. And if you can get that idea in mind as far as rotation and pivot go, you're going to be well ahead of the game. You keep these tilts in mind. That's going to really control how your spine operates. And that's going to give you every advantage you can create with your interaction with the ground and your ability to generate club head speed And the timing of this movement is what creates the consistency. You do those three things combined with the plane, you are building yourself a very consistent golf swing. All right, so we're going to look at plane first. We got Sean set up in our mousetrap here. So we've got, let's have you set up, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a yellow alignment rod, maybe kind of hard to see behind this Live View Pro, but it's on his toe line, down the target line.
Yeah, kind of parallel to where I want the ball to go. Okay.
And we've got our plane line here, this stick representing our plane line, but it's going to be moved in about 6-8 inches off the ball line.
Yeah.
Very important. So let's have you set up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he makes a 2 inside of a takeaway,
you're going to hit it.
He's going to get close to it or hit it.
Hell, some of you might miss it.
Right.
So what we want is you swing it back. If the hands are in line with your club here, you should have a little bit of space here, right?
Yeah, about 6 inches.
Yeah, and that gives you a great way to get some feedback, because if you're out here practicing without feedback, you're just exercising. You're not getting any better. So for me, I like this setup because I tend to get underneath the plane a little.
Yep.
So I feel like after the top of the swing, I need to almost feel, for me, a little bit over the top. I won't be, just the tendency of my swing is to be under. But this gives me a great way to practice my swing plane. Now, talk to us about the live view.
Let's first go back. You made a great point there. So a lot of golfers are over the top. And that's going to stem most likely from an inside takeaway, which this will fix.
Yeah.
And then if you're used to making a downswing that's over, you just put another alignment stick 6 inches outside the ball line. Now he's got this corridor he's got to play in.
Yeah, that's good. You know, some of you might even be so over the top, you need such a big fix, you could even go over it and then almost feel like you go under it.
Right.
So what a great way to work on your overall swing shape and swing plane. That gives you something you can work on that you can go take to the range.
That's exactly right. And you mentioned Live View Pro. So this is a Live View Pro camera system. Sean's set up to it, and this is basically a mirror for him. So we've got him here on the phone.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get a setup line on you.
Okay. I'll sit still.
Yep. I'm going to put the same plane line on your setup, and I'm going to drop the phone down, put it on a ball. So without having to go check his phone, come out of his stance here, come out of the mousetrap, he's able to practice and get some feedback as he's ready to hit this ball.
Yeah, I can see myself here, the tendency to kind of get underneath. So I'm pumping this club up and down and looking on the live view. I can see exactly what I'm doing without having to look back. Because nobody plays golf looking back.
You're trying to find a feel based on the reel.
Yeah, so I can look down here, I can feel it then and see it.
Yes.
So you're taking your practice quality up by 100 times, right?
That's right.
A lot of you are just beating balls. You're not getting anywhere doing that.
Right. For most of you, feel is not real, but the more you can anchor your feels into the reel, the faster you're going to improve. So let's see you get through one here.
All right, so I'm going to work on this just for a second, just to feel it kind of slow, and I'm just going to chip one out there without stopping to see if I can miss everything, or miss the stick, right?
Okay.
My tendency is going to be under it a little bit. So here we go. Just chip one out there. You know, if I go slow, I can feel what I'm doing and I can kind of think my way through it. The live view automatically recorded my swing, so I can go ahead, play that back and through, make sure I like what I see, go ahead and do it again. So it's a great feature. It trims it automatically and I can play it back. Now you're practicing with some quality. 10 minutes of this a day is worth 4 hours of just beating balls. Actually, it's better because you're getting some feedback.
Okay, so now we've trained the first half of the equation, plane.
Yeah.
All right, let's come right back around. We'll reset up our station here and talk about the pivot. All right, now let's look at the pivot and a great little mouse trap. And we call these mouse traps because they're going to let you know if you set them up correctly. They let you know if you did it or didn't do it. It's kind of a pass-fail. Then we also have the added benefit, the added feedback of a visual like the Live View Pro or your camera phone. We just like this because it's way faster and easier. Absolutely. All right, so Sean, explain what you got going on here.
So I've done a little drill here that I like to use with a lot of golfers in lessons. I put the alignment stick in the ground. So it basically it's at the same angle as my right leg when I take a normal kind of shoulder width address position. And the reason it's there, I give myself maybe a couple fingers width here. Okay. Maximum, depending on how big your fingers are, but a couple fingers, maybe an inch from the stick. Yes. Right? I have the student, or I'm going to cross my club over my arms here. And the main reason for this pivot is to allow a little bit of motion to take away into the stick and then kind of peel back away from the stick to recenter. And we have a lot of videos about recentering. We just did one last week, or a couple weeks ago. So a little bit of motion to the right. Now, if I did it wrong, I can feel myself staying on that stick all the way to the top of the backswing, right? So I know I did it wrong. I need that feedback.
And you're going to get the visual of it.
So that's the added bonus. So go ahead and draw me a line, Mike, up my right leg.
So I'm going to draw a line just straight down the middle of his body. All right, then he's going to be able to get both the external feedback from the mouse trap and the visual feedback.
So I can watch myself with a line. I can see a move to the top, recenter a little bit, and I can see both. I can see it if I do it wrong or right, and I can feel it. Now again, practice quality goes up. I don't need much of this every day. I could do this at home without balls.
100%.
Just to learn, changing the motor pattern, it takes feedback to do that, and just to learn it, you can learn the basic body motion at home. So plane plus pivot, club face is all grip. We got plenty of videos for that, but if you can get those three things together, you're going to be playing more consistent golf. I have no doubt about it. We've helped so many people do it, and we know we can help you.
We got the bonus drill for you. That's club face control when we come right back. So our last drill here is our club face drill. We've got a really simple idea, concept drill, and all you need is a tee and a glove.
Yeah, so I just took the tee and placed it against the back of my hand. There's a little hole in everybody's glove where the Velcro straps, just between the Velcro strap and your knuckles. And you can get that pretty much 90 degrees to the back of your hand. Why I like that, you can even do it without a club at first, is it gives you a visual of how that arm and wrist move during the golf swing, because by the time you get to impact, that tee needs to pretty much be facing the target, right? If you had it pointed away from you too much, that ball would go to the right. And if I had it rotated toward me too much, that ball would go too far to the left. So what a great visual aid. I mean, you can do this stuff at the house. Just make sure that tee points, it'll point at the target it's set up, point away from you at halfway back or waist high, then it'll point away from you again. A lot of you don't even realize, or a lot of us don't realize, that we need all this kind of rotation in the arm in order to help square the face. That's a great way to do it. If you want to really progress to that, you can take some swings with a club, start to feel where that motion is going, and then you can even chip some balls out there. But again, if you match the plain stuff that we did in the pivot and this little easy kind of drill with this tee about club face control, you start marrying those three together, now you get some consistency.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We have some videos coming that really dive deeper into this, but the best pivot in the world, the most rotation in the world, will not square that club face. You have to learn to move these hands and arms correctly to square the face.
It's a learned skill.
Absolutely.
And here, it's a great way to do it at home. Just do it, even take a glove into the office if the boss isn't watching, throw a tee in there and just start working. You can do it at your desk, because that's the motion that helps square the face.
You're really going to start to feel this motion, and you combine that with the plane and the pivot, you've got yourself a really consistent golf swing. If you found this video helpful, and you need more help with your consistency, we want to help you with that. Go to the first comment below this video. You'll see a link. It's our first pinned comment. There'll be a link in there. Click on that link. We'll take you to our #1 consistency drill to help you hit the ball more solidly and more consistent every time you're out on the course.